The night sky glowed orange as flames devoured the old Thompson farm, painting the fields in flickering shades of red and gold. Firefighter Jake Rivera stood at the edge of the inferno, sweat trickling down his soot-streaked face despite the bitter cold of the early spring night. The barn was already lost. The roof sagged dangerously, groaning under its own weight, the support beams crackling like kindling. Jake and his crew had just pulled back. The captain's voice thundered through the radio, urgent and final. "Everyone out! Collapse is imminent!" Jake turned to follow, lungs heaving from the thick smoke that clung to everything like tar. But just as his boot met the muddy grass beyond the threshold, a sound pierced the chaos, a high-pitched frantic barking, sharp and desperate. He froze. Behind a wall of smoke, barely visible through the shattered remains of a side window, was a golden retriever. The dog's fur was singed, its eyes wild with terror. It clawed at the window ledge, trying to leap through, trying to escape, or call for help. Hands grabbed Jake's arms. "Jake, don't! It's suicide to go back in," someone shouted. But in that moment, Jake saw something else. The Thompson children, their faces streaked with ash and tears, sobbing as paramedics loaded them into the ambulance. "Please, Daisy's still in there," the youngest had whimpered. "Please don't let her die." "That's their dog," Jake muttered. His voice sounded far away, like someone else was speaking. He remembered the first time he met Daisy. It was at a community event a year ago, where the local firehouse had hosted a safety demo. Daisy had been there, calm and noble in her service vest, sitting loyally at Mrs. Thompson's side as the kids clung to her. Jake had knelt down, offered his hand, and Daisy had licked it once. There was something in her eyes, wise, measured, that had stayed with him. Then he ripped free of the hands holding him, took one last breath of clean air, and charged into the inferno. The heat hit him like a physical blow. Embers rained down from the rafters as he crawled through the smoke, his oxygen mask fogging with every labored breath. The air was thick and choking, the roar of the fire deafening. Time slowed to a crawl. The retriever, now whimpering, was pinned beneath a fallen beam. Her hind leg bent at a sickening angle, her movements sluggish and pained. "Easy, girl. I've got you," Jake rasped, crawling closer. He wedged his shoulders under the smoldering timber and heaved. His muscles screamed in protest, and he barely noticed the blistering heat searing through his turnout gear. Pain became irrelevant. With a final desperate roar, the beam shifted, just enough for the dog to wriggle free. Jake grabbed her collar and turned toward the exit, but the unthinkable happened. His oxygen tank alarm shrieked, a high-pitched wail that cut through the fire. Empty, 60 seconds. Then, worse. The exit was blocked. A curtain of flames roared to life between them and the way out. Jake's mind raced. No options, no time. He could already feel his lungs tightening. His thoughts flickered to his own childhood, to the night he'd watched his own family home burn down, the helplessness of it. That was the night he'd promised himself. No one, no creature, would ever be left behind on his watch. Then, a miracle. The retriever, instead of fleeing, turned back. She clamped her teeth around Jake's glove and began pulling, dragging, guiding. She moved with uncanny purpose, like she knew something he didn't. Through the smoke, Jake spotted it, a gap in the flames where the back wall had collapsed, revealing the open pasture beyond. It was narrow and treacherous, but it was something. Gasping, he lunged toward it, clutching the dog's collar. Behind them, the barn let out a final, splintering groan, and the roof exploded inward in a shower of sparks. They tumbled into the grass outside, coughing and wheezing, the fire's heat licking at their backs. Paramedics rushed to Jake's side as he collapsed, his vision swimming. The dog, Daisy, limped in frantic circles around the stretcher, whining. "Easy, girl," Jake coughed, barely able to lift his head. But Daisy wouldn't stop barking. She faced the barn again, eyes locked on the wreckage. That's when they heard it. Faint mewling, high-pitched, weak, but unmistakable. "There's something alive in there," Jake gasped, his voice raw. Without hesitation, two fresh firefighters sprinted toward the smoldering ruin. Minutes later, they emerged, faces streaked with soot, arms full of a wriggling bundle. Puppies, 7 of them, nestled in a nesting box buried beneath a partially collapsed hayloft. The mother had clearly hidden them there before trying to find help. Daisy let out a bark that sounded more like a sob and began licking each puppy, counting them, nudging them gently. The entire crew stood in stunned silence. Some wiped their eyes. Later, at the emergency vet, the true extent of Daisy's ordeal became clear. The burns on her paws weren't just from the fire. They were deliberate, deep cuts. She had chewed through a locked doggy door, breaking herself free to get to her puppies. Then, instead of fleeing, she ran toward the humans, toward help. "She knew," the vet whispered. "She knew exactly what she was doing." Daisy's recovery was slow. Her paws were bandaged for weeks, and her leg had to be splinted. The Thompson kids visited her every day at the vet's office, bringing her bits of chicken and whispering stories into her floppy ears. Jake stopped by too, sometimes sitting silently beside her crate, resting his hand on her head. Jake's hospital recovery wasn't much faster. Between coughing fits and IV fluids, he couldn't stop replaying the moment Daisy tugged him through the fire. One night, the Thompson kids snuck into his room with homemade cards and a small plush golden retriever. "For when you miss the real Daisy," the little girl said. Jake barely held back tears. The story spread fast. By sunrise, local news vans lined the dirt road leading to the Thompson property. Photos of Daisy, wrapped in a blanket, her pups nestled beside her, flooded social media. The town, still reeling from the loss of the historic farm, found a hero in the ashes. People started sending letters. Some mailed toys, others treats. Children from across the state drew pictures of Daisy and her pups. One letter, scrawled in blue crayon, simply read, "You're the bravest dog in the world." A week later, the town hosted a small ceremony at City Hall. Daisy received a custom medal with her name engraved on it. The mayor knelt down to place it around her neck while the crowd applauded. Jake stood beside her, arm in a sling, blinking back tears. When the Thompsons rebuilt their home, the firehouse helped pour the foundation. Jake visited often, always welcome with coffee and warm biscuits. Daisy, now a bit slower, still limped out to greet him, tail thumping. The puppies would pile around her, a whirl of fur and energy, though they always quieted when Daisy barked once. A mother's command. All 7 puppies were adopted by members of the fire department. The smallest, barely larger than a loaf of bread, was named Ember. She bonded with Jake instantly, following him everywhere on tiny paws. During training, she proved exceptional, fearless, curious, and loyal. Today, Ember is in training to become an arson K9, just like her mother was before retirement. Her nose is sharp, her spirit unshakable. She wears a custom harness with her name embroidered in gold thread, and Jake swears she understands every word he says. Years later, Jake still visits the Thompson farm, now fully rebuilt with modern safety upgrades. Daisy, now graying around the muzzle, lies in the sun with her eyes half closed, while Ember sprints joyfully across the yard with the Thompson kids. Jake sometimes sits quietly on the porch, sipping coffee, watching the scene with a soft smile. And on Jake's desk at the station sits an old, chewed-up collar, singed at the edges but still whole. "She didn't just save me," Jake often tells reporters. She taught us what courage really looks like. Because sometimes heroes walk on four legs. Would you have run back into that fire? Sound off in the comments and hit subscribe, because real life miracles happen when we least expect them.